And I think the important thing we need to all appreciate is, that honeybees are a factory, and that's not appreciated by the general public. The general public, think honeybees and honey, but there's a lot of products you can get from a honeybee colony. And, for example, pollen. Bees need 100 kilos of pollen a year to sustain a hive. So a lot of hives would collect more pollen than they would honey, because they need that for their life and their body structures. And we can pinch some of it, but if we take too much, the same with honey, the colonies are going to suffer. So we're not covering everything. I mean, there's propolis, there's bee venom, there's a whole lot of broiled jelly, there's a whole lot of other byproducts that we could have talked about, but we picked the main ones, and pollen was picked because it's a royal to show class, and we're encouraging people to show honey to promote the industry. And increasing hives is important to individual beekeepers for a number of reasons: stop swarming, increase hive numbers, and the same with comb or cut comb honey production. So I'll talk about cut comb honey production. Anyone can do this, and you don't have to be a commercial beekeeper with a substantial flow, because there's very substantial flows in the Sydney metropolitan area. This honey comes from a backyard in Castle Hill. It happens to be where I live, and bees have boomed there this year because different species have flowered. What's flowering currently in the bee garden? What trees are flowering in the bee garden at present?
You said borage.
No, what trees are flowering in the bee garden at the present time? Gum, no. Sorry? What eucalypts are flowering in the bee garden? Okay, so it's important to be observant when you're a beekeeper. And I think Michael, stressed that this morning when he talked about, use of infrared cameras and things. So there's tallow wood. So the trees that are along that fence line is tallow wood. There's a lot of that flowering now. The tree in the middle of the bee garden, where the hives are, is iron bark. So we need to know what's flowering to know what to do with our bees. So if you're going to harvest from a factory, you need to know where the production's coming from. And we as beekeepers need to know where the production's going to come from in the future before we harvest. So, this is called cut comb honey production. Section honey production is where you put small sections or frames in the hive of either timber or plastic, and the bees actually build the comb in that small frame. That's called a section. What I'm going to do now is called cut comb. So what we need to do, cut comb, is a pair of pliers. So this frame's prepared the normal way. Comb foundation in it, put in a hive above an excluder. So I've got to get the wire out of this because the public don't like eating wire. So I get a screwdriver, and where the wire's nailed onto the nails, I get a screwdriver under there and I break that wire off where the nail is, like that. I then can get the screwdriver and go under the end there. I can put the screwdriver under there and pull, and the wire comes out like that. The other end, I can do this. Some people, heat it up. That one broke, which wasn't supposed to happen after you said all easy. So you can get, pliers on it. Good. That one's coming. The warmer the day, the easier it comes, all right? So that wire's out. I can then go this end, put the screwdriver under here, lever it up. Oh, that broke too. They don't always break, sometimes they do. I've been jinxed. You can then... That's right. Pull that, and that's coming. Yeah, I should have. Okay, so that gets all the wires out. Then you've got to make sure that they're well out of the way. Now, the important thing is that pollen can cause an allergic reaction in some people. So if you sell pollen, by law, you've got to label it may cause an allergic reaction. And the same with comb honey. So bees can take pollen above an excluder. They normally don't, but sometimes they can. So if you hold the frame up to the light, you can see the pollen in it. There's a few cells of pollen in this. So if I sold this, I'd need to put on the container, may cause an allergic reaction, as well as the other requirements. So I put it down like that on there. I then get a knife and cut round the edge, like so. And if you cut in a bit from the wire, from the wood, it makes it look a bit better. So I cut through there like that, right through. Same down here, and the same down here. Now some bees build different coloured cappings. The reason being that some strains of bees, depending on their mating and the genetics, fill the cell right to the top. If they fill the cell right to the top, the combs are darker in colour than if they leave an airspace under the cells. In this case, there's an airspace under most of these cells, so therefore the caps are white. So you may need to pick hives, and you'll notice that, in your apiary, different coloured caps on cells. I had a bucket. I'm just putting that there just to keep the stuff from running. Right. Then you can buy stainless steel cutters off some of the suppliers here, and I bought this off one of the suppliers, but not today. So you can get that size there, and that cuts a full depth comb into 8. You can also get a cutter, half this, or put an insert in this, and it'll cut a frame up into 16. So it's not difficult to the market, to get $20, not 20, $10 or more for each one of these squares. So that piece cut up, it's worth $80 if you got $10 a thing. So then you just put it on like that, and just simply stamp out the container like so, and then you can buy from beekeeping suppliers different ones to these, or you can use these ones, and it's just a matter of picking that up and putting it in there like that. That's it. Done. And then you need to label it, honey, your name and address, product of Australia, the weight, and if it's got pollen in it, may cause an allergic reaction. That's it, done. So are there any questions on that?
You freeze that?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so to store it, if you freeze honey, it never freezes and it won't crystallise if it hasn't already started to crystallise. If it started to crystallise, it will continue to crystallise even if you freeze it. So if I go to markets, it's liquid, I bring it home from the market. If I left it for the next market, which might be a month's time, it'll go crystallised probably because it's been cut on the edge and air's got in there. If I put it in the freezer, it won't go crystallised or candy. So that's the best way to store it. To store the frames, you can store them in the freezer as well, if you've got a friendly wife or you own your own freezer, all depends. Or you can put them in boxes. Now wax moths won't touch comb that's white comb, but if there's pollen in it, they will because they eat protein, and so will small hive beetle. And it's also hydroscopic, so if you're going to store it in a box, you need to put newspaper in the box, and the newspaper will absorb the moisture and it won't get into the honey, into the comb. Now, I used to do that for years. Before we had small hive beetle, just store it with newspaper in it. That's the trick, stops all the humidity or the moisture building up in the comb. So any other?
Is small hive beetle only a recent phenomenon?
Yeah, relatively recent, yeah. They probably come in when the Olympics were here, we think. No proof, went to the RAF base at Richmond. They DNA'd back to South Africa. South Africa's got African races of bees, not European races we've got here. So we don't import any bees or anything from South Africa because they're a different race. So there's evidence they come in soil, under a container. All the containers are stored at the RAF base at Richmond. The epicenter seemed to be around Richmond, so they probably come in then. Maybe. Yeah, with foundation. Yeah, if you do it with foundation, you get even cells. You do it without foundation, you get drone and worker cells mixed up because bees naturally do that, and it doesn't look as attractive if it's all comb foundation. Now, I don't know now, but years ago, you could buy comb foundation that was called thin surplus. It was rolled a lot thinner than normal foundation, so therefore it was better to eat in that it was thinner, but I think bees thin it down to the same thickness anyway. But if you're going to do comb foundation, you can buy thin surplus so you get more shoots per kilo. And if you buy foundation by the kilo, not by the sheet, you get more per kilo because it's rolled thinner. And that's better for eating anyway.
So you'd put that in the freezer when you go home?
I wouldn't now because it's going to stay liquid for a few weeks. But I can put it in the freezer. If there's any small high beetle eggs or any problems with it, they'll kill them. Yeah.
You can put it in the fridge though?
No, the fridge will make it go candy. Yeah, fridge is an ideal candying temperature. Crystallising, freezer. It's got to go in the freezer. Honey doesn't freeze. I was using any freeze in the wall.
So there's no advantage to using, letting the build their own comb. You reckon it's,
Well, it's not as attractive because it's a mixture of cells. You can do it, but it's not as attractive. And if the space that comb's out wider, the width of the comb is wider too.
can you eat the wax?
Yes, yes. Some people eat and digest the wax, polishes their intestine, better singers, all sorts of things. Other people spit it out. It's not going to hurt you. I'm no medico, I don't know. Tamara. Can we taste it? Yeah. Catch.
Just a little bit. No, not this one. This is a little bit of this.
Here, on the edge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Righto.
Thank you.
So it's probably tallow wood, which doesn't yield very often, but did this year.
You have to cut the wires. You just cut down with the knife down.
No, it makes it more attractive if you cut the wires, pull the wires out. Some people just push the comb through the wires and leaves a line. It's not hard to pull the wires out because it's all stainless steel wire now, it doesn't break. It's really easy to pull them out. And if you heat it up with electric current, 12 volt current like you do if you're embedding, it comes out real easy. Yeah, so you can do that.